Paul, thanks for speaking to us. I know it's clearly early days and the crucial question is which tier you'll be in, but can you first off give your reaction to the news that fans will be allowed in to sport at tiers 1 and 2 level?
Yeah, sure. It's welcome news. I mean, I think it's a little bit earlier than we expected, but it's a good first step towards a return to some degree of normality.
And at the levels that we're talking about at the moment, up to 2,000 for tier 1 and 4,000 for tier 2, is it something that you're willing to get on board with and open up the stadium to that level of fans?
Yeah, I mean, in the short term, it's an important first step. Long term, it's not viable for us to operate at those sort of levels. But what we recognise is two things. First of all, this is really important for clubs lower down the football pyramid. And, this could be the difference for some of those clubs between, being able to survive this crisis and not. So from that point of view, this is really welcome news. And secondly, it's an opportunity to re-engage with our fans. Our fans have been incredibly loyal to us throughout the pandemic. And even being able to get 2,000 or perhaps 4,000 back into our stadium in the near term is actually a really welcome reward for them.
And how do you plan to work out who gets the tickets? Because clearly it is only a small number at the moment. How do you plan to distribute the tickets?
We've been working on a ballot system for some time, and fans will be able to opt into the ballot or opt out if they don't feel comfortable yet to come back to football. But obviously with such a small number of tickets, we expect the demand to be very, very high.
And what is the number? Do you have a set figure that is the sort of magic number where it goes from a loss-making exercise to breaking even that you're sort of aiming for at the moment?
Well, it really depends on what day of the week, who our opposition is, kick-off times. There's so many factors that go into the operational costs that we put into a game. But we certainly are preparing and had prepared for fans returning up to 25% of our capacity, which would be sort of much closer to 8,000 supporters than the 2 to 4 that we might be able to get in the short term. At those sort of levels, it's certainly more viable for us. But obviously our aim is to try and get to a place where we can scale up the number of fans coming back to the stadium safely as quickly as we can. And if we can do that, that returns football to a much more viable position than we've been in for some time now.
And I know, as I say, it's early days, but the logistics of actually a match day with this level of fans, what are you expecting in terms of the sort of stewarding numbers that you're going to need and things like food and drink? There's been some speculation about sale of alcohol and also the behaviour of fans, this sort of so-called code of conduct. Are you able to share anything at this stage of what fans can expect to see on match day?
We're quite fortunate that we held the test event here back in August for 2,500 fans. So we'll be largely repeating the operational plan that we used for that event. We're following the Sports Ground Safety Authority guidelines. Our absolute priority is to make sure people can come back safely, that we maintain social distancing, that we ask people to wear face masks at certain places in and around the stadium. We do expect to be able to serve food and drink, but most importantly, we hope that people will take responsibility not only for themselves, but also for fellow fans and also for our staff, so that we can bring fans back safely and prove to government that we're in a position to expand the number of fans in the stadium sooner rather than later.
Any ban on singing and shouting?
No, I think that the lightest possible touch to what people's normal match day is really important, because that way I think we can get more cooperation from fans, more support from fans for maintaining the really, really important safety guidelines of distancing, face coverings, keeping their hands clean and so on. And it is a football match. We want people to come back and enjoy themselves again. It's been a long, long time since football fans have been able to come to their stadiums and support their team. And I would hope that people would respect each other and look after each other, but we would hope also that they would sing and shout in all the right places as they have done for many, many years before now. So we're looking forward to it. And as I say, it's a small first step back towards where we want to be.
And just lastly, Paul, because I realise I've only got a limited amount of time with you, but the bailout that you've been working out with the EFL, does yesterday's decision have any bearing on the likelihood of that going through and those kinds of negotiations?
Well, I think that's very much a matter for the Premier League and the EFL to discuss between their respective organisations. As clubs, we've already provided our input to the package that's on offer, and now we wait to hear what the outcome of that is.
Brilliant. I will let Elliot ask you some more questions. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Laura.
Hello, Paul.
Hello there. How you
Hello,
doing?
Paul. How are you? It's Elliot from Sky Sports News.
Good.
Nice to chat to you again. You say that this perhaps came a little bit earlier than you expected. Is there any possibility? Why do you say that?
Well, I think we'd all been conditioned to some extent that we might not see fans before Christmas and perhaps not until the spring. So it's particularly good news that we're going to see fans before Christmas, albeit in small numbers. It is a really good first step, and we're looking forward to proving to government that we can bring fans back safely, and then, as I said, move on to perhaps higher numbers sooner rather than later.
You've already done a lot of work, Paul, in terms of how you're going to divvy up the tickets through the ballot system. But are you prepared for perhaps a bit of criticism from fans who unfortunately won't be able to get in?
Do you know, the one thing I think throughout this pandemic that has impressed me has been the patience of supporters, not just of our club, but right the way across the country. I think people recognise this has been a very difficult time for everybody, not least football clubs who've been trying to play matches behind closed doors, maintain all of the normal match day protocols that our players have to go through, but do so without our fans in the stadium to provide that great atmosphere and support for the team. And I think this first step of getting 2,000 or 4,000 people back is a small step, but an important one, and an important one for the fans as well. We want to bring them with us. We're not going to be able to fit everybody in. Everybody knows that. It's been well trailed. There's no surprises there. And I think people will be genuinely delighted that we're on the path to bringing more fans back, perhaps sooner, as I said, than we might have expected.
We shouldn't be speculating on what tier Brighton will fall in at this stage for obvious reasons. But say, for example, you were in tier 1 and you were allowed 4,000 fans. How much would that help the club financially? Would it fill a bit of a hole for you in that short-term period, Paul?
Frankly, no. It would probably still see us operating at a match day loss. But I think it's more important than that. I think it's a psychological step towards where we want to be. It's an opportunity for us to prove to government that we can bring fans back safely. And it's also good for us to be able to re-engage with our supporters, to give them something for the loyalty that they've shown us while we've been playing behind closed doors. So for me, it's more symbolic than financial at this stage. For clubs lower down the pyramid, the financial position will be greatly improved by bringing back 2,000 to 4,000 fans if they can, because they don't have the benefit of the TV income that we do. For us, it's more of that psychological step towards normal, which is really important right now, and particularly after we're coming out of a second lockdown.
What have you learned from the pilot test event that you had, that pre-season friendly against Chelsea? This probably gives you a bit of a head start, arguably, against other clubs.
Well, I think the first thing we learned was that football fans can be trusted. And I think, there's been a lot of talk about whether it's possible to bring back football fans and ask them to comply with a whole new range of regulations. Well, the test event showed us that we can, and supporters were incredibly diligent in actually following the protocols that we'd set out. I think the second thing that we learned was that we were able to put in place a plan that worked for our club. We could share that information and the work that we did with all other clubs, but it's really important then that individual clubs take on the basics of the plan and adapt it for their own stadium. Every stadium in the country is different. Every supporter base is different. Every club is different in the way it operates. So, our blueprint works for us. It may not necessarily work 100% for every other club, but at least we've been through the pilot event, as have some EFL clubs as well. And we are very, very happy to learn from each other. We'll be just as keen to hear about the experiences of other clubs when fans start to come back at other stadiums, as we will be in actually looking at our own event again and seeing what else we can learn from that.
I know you were already asked about this, Paul, but it's quite important, I think, from a fan's perspective to get an idea of what a match day experience might be like. I know the Premier League at the moment are going through protocols and they're yet to be finalised over how it's going to work. But are you confident that alcohol and food and drink will be served for fans?
Well, I can only really talk about what was permitted at the test event. We were able to sell food and drink. We were able to control the use of face masks and social distancing as well as possible when you've got 2,500 fans in a football stadium. I think the most important thing about that test event was the compliance of fans. I think if you show football supporters respect, if you ask them to do reasonable things in a reasonable way, then you get a very reasonable and respectful response. And that's what we got from the test event. It made it possible for us to keep everyone safe. It made it possible for everyone to enjoy coming back to football on that day. And I see no reason why that can't be repeated for the matches we've got coming up after the lockdown finishes.
And finally from me, Paul, because I know other people want to ask questions. We recently saw the use of disinfectant bays at Windsor Park for Northern Ireland's games. They were allowed in a certain amount of fans, which I'm sure you're probably aware. Is that something that we might see at the Amex and in the Premier League?
We haven't committed to that yet. I mean, the Premier League is part of the STIG group that is looking at rapid testing as a way of accelerating the number of fans coming back. And we would certainly be interested in committing to a programme that enabled us to bring more supporters back sooner with some form of rapid tested programme. But at the moment, we're trying to keep things as simple as we possibly can. We will be asking people to declare their well-being before taking a ticket to come to the event. There will be temperature checks as people come in. We will be requiring people to social distance and wear masks. And of course, once in the stadium, we will have a very established seating pattern that maintains that social distancing. So a combination of things where we're looking to keep people safe, but also appealing to people themselves to use their common sense. We've all lived with this virus now for a very long time. We've got used to doing the things we need to do to keep each other safe and ourselves safe. And there's no reason why that should change once inside a football stadium.
That's lovely, Paul. Thanks very much for your time and all the best to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No problem. Thanks a lot.
Johnny, do you want to go next? And then we'll go to Sarah after that.
Paul, is there anything that you would do differently from the test event going forward? Any lessons learnt from that?
No, I think overall, Johnny, we were very happy with the way the test event went. There were a couple of small things, I think, in the lead up to entry to the stadium. For example, we were required fans to bring photo ID for children. I think at the time we said that we didn't think that was necessary. We have a policy here that children under the age of 13 have to be accompanied by an adult anyway. So, you know, if they're coming in with an adult and we've got the details of the adult that's bringing them, then we don't need to put parents to the trouble of bringing photo ID for children. I think inside the stadium, everything worked really well. People complied with distancing requests, with face mask wearing requests. People maintained the seating patterns that we'd asked them to keep distance once they were sat in their seats. And when they got up and down, people turned their backs towards each other when they passed in the seating rows. And then as they moved up and down the staircases, preference was given to those coming up the stairs who were exhaling more than those coming down the stairs. So people were, as I said earlier, Johnny, were very responsible, very respectful, not only to each other, but also to our staff. And that made the event as successful as it was.
I know we don't know the numbers just yet, but what discussions have you had and what sort of provision are you making in terms of transportation? Because that was one of the key considerations in terms of a return for fans back to stadia.
Well, we're working on two plans. We're assuming that we will be lucky enough to be in one of the tiers that allow us to bring some fans back, so either 2,000 or 4,000. We'll be looking to maximise parking so that people will have the choice of travelling by private car subject to availability. We'll be working with our normal travel providers to make sure services are available for the game, the first game back. And then once again, we'll be pushing the responsibility onto individuals to make their own choices. And I think, again, treating people as adults, treating people with respect and allowing them to come to the game, get away from the game in a mode of transport that suits their lifestyle, but also suits their particular health condition, age, etc., is really important. So choice, I think, rather than prescription, is the most important thing here.
And how are you communicating with fans, particularly in terms of who gets the available tickets and how that process will go? How are you? I know you've been in regular communication throughout the last 9 months, but what provisions have you got in place for that?
Well, the supporter services team here have been working on a ballot system, which the fans have now had plenty of months of notice to get used to. They are able to link up with family and friends to be a group within the ballot. So if one comes out, they all come out, and if no one comes out, clearly they won't come as a group. But that's an opportunity for people to maintain their normal football traditions of coming to the game with family and friends. And then here, once here, you know, they will still be able to sort of mix as they would normally mix, but obviously respecting social distancing and wearing of face coverings, etc. So we've got all of that going on. Lots of communication will go out on that before the game itself, as it did before the test event. We've got special signage that's been produced here, which is in a distinctive green colour, which is very different to any other colour signage that we use within the stadium. That's COVID directional signage, which will remind people to maintain social distancing, wear face coverings, keep their hands clean, look after each other, look after themselves. And all those things combined with the training of our staff and the work that's gone into preparing the plan is designed to keep people as safe as possible and allow them also to enjoy themselves returning to football, which is really important. What we don't want is to have people come back and feel that they're massively constrained by an environment that is very unfamiliar to them. It's a challenging time, but it has been for the last 7, 8, 9 months for everybody. We want to try and make sure that their experience back in the football stadium is as enjoyable as it can be, but with a priority on safety.
Thanks for your time, Paul, as always.
Cheers, Johnny. Thanks.
You still there, Sarah?
Yes, I'm here.
Go for it.
Thank you, Paul, for your time. I won't keep you much longer. Everything's been really well covered. It's just striking me sitting here at what a huge responsibility you have kind of bearing down on your shoulders. As you say, a challenging time for all of us, but a really challenging time for you at the moment. When you start having to throw fans into the mix, it's a whole new level, isn't it?
It is, but we're used to staging major public events for 31,000 people here. So in some ways, you know, we're getting back to doing what we do and what we've been trained to do and what our staff are trained to do. And that's exciting, actually, because, you know, the one thing I've always enjoyed working in football, strangely, are the periods in between matches when the stadium is empty and peaceful. I now hate those periods because they've become, unfortunately, our match days as well as our non-match days. So for me, the thought of bringing even 2,000 fans back in the next sort of week or two is really exciting. And I know our staff are very energized by it. It's a real lift for them. It's not going to financially change our lives in any way. In fact, it's probably going to contribute more to our losses than anything. But it's a small first step towards where we want to go, which is back to normal. And back to normal is having a full stadium again.
The government have described it, haven't they, on that note, as one of their morale boosters, and that's really what it is, isn't it?
I think it is. I mean, I think for the smaller clubs further down the pyramid, you know, it could be a financial lifeline, which is really important, and we really welcome that for them. For the bigger clubs with the bigger stadiums, it's much more of a psychological boost. It's a step towards where we want to be. It's an opportunity to test the plans that we've been working on for so many weeks and months now. It's an opportunity for some of our staff to return to the office environment, having worked at home for periods of time. And it's an opportunity really for our players to get the energy that the fans provide. And ultimately, it's a small reward for the fans that have been so patient with us and for us over the last 7, 8, 9 months. I mean, they've supported us from behind their TV screens, which is great, but it's nothing like being in the stadium, being able to make a little bit of noise and get behind the team, which is really important for us.
It certainly is. Just finally, dare I say, and hopefully this won't happen because it would be fairly churlish of people, but do you think there'll be any cries of unfair advantage depending on how many, you know, depending on which tier a team is in and how many fans they've got?
I hope not. I mean, I can only relate to the test event we had here against Chelsea back in the summer, and speaking afterwards to Frank Lampard, who was talking about how as energized his players were just to be in front of fans, even though they were Brighton fans and not Chelsea fans. They at that time just enjoyed being in front of even 2,500 fans, and they got their own energy from that. So yes, of course, you know, there's going to be some partisan fans, Brighton fans, that are going to be shouting more for our team, obviously. But hopefully the energy of the game and the atmosphere that we've been sort of missing so much will benefit everybody. Hopefully us just a little bit more than our opposition.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Paul. Thank you.